Rice Fame Group supports the legacies of HBCUs. Hello, this is Lacy L. Rice Jr. with Rice Fame Group, welcoming you to Chat with HBCU Champions, episode 12 of season 3, with head coach Larry Rather from Fort Valley State University's men's volleyball. This year, they won the SIAC championship. So congratulations, coach, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and definitely thank you for having me on this. It's an honor and a privilege. I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, we're glad to have you here. And, we know that men's volleyball is one of the newer sports, especially for HBCUs. And so, congratulations to you. And we're definitely going to do a deep dive into men's volleyball for the SIAC. Well, actually for NCAA Division II HBCU men's volleyball, because the SIAC and the CIAA started programs the same year. So, please tell us a bit about yourself, including, any playing and coaching experience.
Yeah. So for me, I was fortunate enough to honestly be born in this game. My dad played in the military. He was in the Army, played all armed forces, all Army team. And he'll tell this story until the end. They were in the semis. They won the semis. They had to run over to the hospital, which was across the street. My mom had me, and then they came right back, and he had to go into the final. So I've literally been in the gym for this sport my entire life. But he didn't allow me to really start playing until I was about 12. But this game has been a part of me my entire life with it. Football was really my first love, though. Volleyball was kind of the sport that you're always going to be around, so it's there. But football was my true passion. Being the youngest sibling, you kind of have a little bit more anger issues because you're always the one who's getting beat up and picked on by the older siblings. So football was the place I could go and really get passionate and be aggressive and have a good time. And that, to me, came over into the volleyball world once I really started getting into it and I stopped playing football. I was this little 5'11" guy that was just fiery and over the top. And people were like, why? This is the only person I've ever seen who's like chest bumping people in volleyball. Like, what is happening? But yeah, so I ended up getting recruited to Ball State University, which is in Muncie, Indiana, where I played Division I volleyball for 4 years. I was an all-conference player while there. While there, I was coaching as well. So I've been coaching since 2010. So I'm going on 15 years of coaching in general now. And it's always been in my blood. My dad's been coaching this whole time. So I've always had somebody to kind of see and have as a mentor in that aspect. And kind of pushing forward into it is when Fort Valley came, it was something I had to take away for the fact of my dad did the same exact thing with a high school, where I went to school for my freshman year before transferring out. My brother graduated from there, and it was a minority high school, predominantly Black school. And so he brought volleyball there, and it became something that was respectable to them. Even though I was able to get him his first conference ring when he was with us, he hasn't had one yet. So I was up on him, already had a ring, so I had to get him one too, But yeah, coaching wise, I coached at a top club in Indiana for the girls side. I got into boys once I graduated college and went back home, started coaching with my dad at his club that he had, Vortex Volleyball Club. I was an assistant director and the 18-1s coach. And then from there, I went to the University of Charleston, where I was the assistant coach. I was there for 2 years, and that was right when COVID hit. So my last year is when everyone started getting the tick up in that 2019 of like everything starting to get shut down. That was my final year there. And that's also the year where I got the job for Fort Valley. So 2020, July 1st, when I started for Fort Valley during that COVID season, which was definitely tough because you can't really go anywhere or do anything, but I got to field a team for the next season and get ready to go. And then came to Fort Valley. I ran the men's and the women's program for the past 3 years. Well, 4 years if you count that gap year. Coach for 3 seasons with them, and then going into this season, I'll be strictly just the men now.
Okay. So, men's volleyball started for HBCUs back in 2020. That's when the first program, and they were trying to. I mean, they were going at it over who was going to start first. I remember it vividly, and that was actually due to a grant or sponsorship by USA Volleyball.
Yeah, so
USA Men's Volleyball.
USA Volleyball and First Point Volleyball Foundation are the ones who contributed. And First Point has done an awesome job starting a lot of programs in the country. We were the first conference that they were able to really build and start going. And I'm still in contact with Wade. Wade is a great resource for us and wanting to make sure this thrives and succeeds, because him and John Sparall, who's our national team coach, that was their vision when they started this. They believe we're still not tapping into our full potential of all of our athletes in the country. So they wanted to get into the HBCU realm so we could start building and getting more cultural involved. And now we're really getting the best athletes all around and not just those who are exposed to it a lot sooner.
Right. Yeah, and I said I remember some of the announcements that were made from the SIAC and the CIAA about, having starting those programs, because it was first of a kind. And unfortunately, like you said, COVID hit. Nobody saw that coming. And then, I don't know, was that in a way a blessing too, that you had more time to plan?
100%. It was 100% a blessing in disguise for us, because initially you get hired July 1 and you're trying to field a team. Originally it was supposed to be for the 2020 season that spring. So you'd had to try to get a team together in the midst of a couple of months. So having COVID actually allowed us as coaches, especially for me, is who I can speak for, is it allowed me time to get acclimated to the university and to our systems and the things we're doing, and getting systems properly set up for our guys and our women when they got to campus, that this is how we're going to do things and where we're looking. And it definitely helped ease into it for sure.
Okay. And now I see that it's spread. I believe, and I have to go back and check. I know Talladega started men's volleyball this past season.
Yep. So Talladega started up. Talladega was actually put in to be in our conference, but they did not get their sponsorship from NCAA to go from NAI to D2. But the plan is for them in 2 years to reapply and be good to go and come into our conference. And it's something we're excited about. We played them in their first year. And anytime there's a new HBCU that's starting men's volleyball, I want to be the biggest supporter I can to help in any way, because I want us to be able to thrive in this game.
Okay. Well, Coach, tell us about your team this year. Who were some of your key athletes and what were some of their accomplishments?
Yeah, so key athletes, I mean, we had Jackson Hicks, who was player of the year this last year. He's a guy from Illinois. He actually grew up in my backyard where I'm from. So I had a buddy reach out to me. He was a part of our original group that we brought in that 2021 class. And he's a guy that has progressively gotten better every single year. And his big thing is just gaining that more confidence in himself and what he's capable of. And sometimes as a coach, you see what they're capable of before they do. And they don't have the confidence. And you're like, dude, just go. Like, trust the process. Like, you're about to be really good. And for him to be able to accomplish that in year 3, finishing his junior year to become player of the year for our was a huge accomplishment for him. And then we have Isaiah Fed, who's an outside. Jackson's our right side outside. But then Isaiah Fed, who's another outside for us. The kid's a sophomore, and he is just a freak of an athlete. He's a guy that when you see in any sport, and you're like, I don't know how he's doing what he's doing. Like, he is just gifted athletically. So he's a guy that was right on Jackson's heels of being player of the year, and he missed the first month of our season. And then we had a transfer from George Mason that came to us this past year. Jay Cooper, he's an outside. He was a guy that wasn't getting much time at Mason and had a year of eligibility left. And he was a guy I recruited when I was at the University of Charleston. And so when he was going to his 5th year and he was looking for a school and he was talking to his coach in his end of the year meetings, he's like, I'm thinking about wanting to go to an HBCU. And I only got one in mind. And his coach, who's a friend of mine, and my mentor, he's like, I can only think of one. And they both were like, Fort Valley's like, okay, cool. We're on the same track. Like, that's the only place we think of when we think we want to go to an HBCU. We got him in, and he was a guy that he brought in the seniority. He brought in the maturity mentally for our guy that we kind of needed, because we were a young class. We had a class that didn't have anybody to follow, right? Like, usually when you come into a program as a freshman, you have seniors, juniors who have been here. They've done the system. They've run the culture. They know what it's like, someone who can help guide them. So it was a little struggle for them in the first 2 years because they had a lot to do, right? They had to learn the culture. They had to learn the system. They had to learn the school atmosphere. So there's a lot on them. And to have a guy who has been in a bigger program come in and be that voice for them and help them, like, see things from a different perspective that they can as assistants really helped. And he played a great role in us doing that for our team. So I think we're in a really good spot. Those guys come back except for Che, and we got some other guys that are coming in that are going to do some really good things. So I see nothing but an upward trajectory for Fort Valley moving forward. Now that we've made the national stage, right? Like, everyone got to see us. Now they know it's real. Now our recruiting ability for me, now I can walk around with my chest a little puffed, right? And my chin a little high as I'm going to talk to these kids. Cause, like, hey, we made it to the tournament. If you want to go, here's a great opportunity for you, and be the first to be able to do it.
Okay. So, well, tell us a bit about your conference, including the competition that you played in the conference and as well as out of the conference.
Yeah, so our conference right now, I mean, we're still in that infancy stage. So there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of up and down going on. But I think the mindset of the coaches and the players that are in our conferences, we want to be better. Like, we don't want to be any less than. We're trying to compete with the best players every single chance we get. Our schedule for last year, we opened our season with UCLA, Pepperdine, and USC. Like, we're not running from anybody. And UCLA won it this year, right? So we opened our season with UCLA. We played the first round in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament against UCLA. So, like, for us, it was like no better way to go into that situation. And so, like, every year for us is going to be playing top Division I teams, because that's the difference for men's volleyball compared to other sports. Is men's volleyball competes at a D1, D2 level. So D2 universities are competing for a national Division I title, not a Division II title, because there aren't enough teams fully yet for them to separate and be their own entities. So as a D2 school, we have less resources. We don't have all the pretty bells and whistles, but we have the grit, and we have the ability to still go and compete with these programs and these teams. So, I mean, this coming year, we're looking to play. It was just announced a couple days ago. We're going to Reno, and we'll be playing Grand Canyon, Long Beach, Belmont Abbey. And with the 4 teams that are there, it's 4 of the Elite 8 that were in the national title, right? So that's going to be an awesome experience for our guys. It's going to be some great high-level play for us. So we're just continuing to push that envelope and trying to get that crack in that top 20 rankings to be the first HBCU to make it into the rankings.
Okay. So that's interesting. that you're playing primarily no division in NCAA. So it's you mentioned the resources disparity.
Hmm.
Is there also a large gap or large disparity when it comes to size?
I would say yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is, yeah, we're going to have a couple of guys who are smaller, but we still have some guys with size. But the no is we may be a little smaller, but we jump, right? That's what we're known for. we're air creatures. We live in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So we make up for that height difference with our verticals. So it's not too much of a disparity where it's a big gap. I would say the biggest gap is more so just the IQ of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Having a high volleyball IQ of the game, because most of the guys of color aren't starting until their sophomore, junior year of high school, where our
Mm-hmm.
counterparts are really starting when they're like 13, 14. And they're already comfortable in this system. They understand it. And now once you understand it, you're able to start messing around in it a little bit more, start towing the line of what rules I can get away with. You start learning a little bit more of the gamesmanship of the sport, of what I can get away with and what I can't. And so for us, it's more of just the IQ. And once we catch up in that aspect, I think physicality will catch up. I think we're already in a really good spot just naturally. And so we add that extra piece into it. And that's what we're going to be focused on a lot for our guys this year. Now that I only have the men, is focusing on IQ, bringing in some officials who can come in and do a little seminar for them so they can ask questions, go through things, and do different stuff to where we can get caught up as quick as possible on the mental side of the game. Physicality is never going to be an issue.
Okay. Well, and it's kind of interesting. And that was the reason I asked, because I'm a big Wilt Chamberlain fan. And I don't care what anybody says, he's still the GOAT. He has more records than anybody else, world championships or whatever, I'm sorry, NBA titles. That doesn't factor into me because that's a team award, not an individual award. But not only is he considered by many to be the greatest basketball player of all time, he's also considered to be the greatest men's volleyball player of all time. And he 7'1", weighed anywhere between 275 to 300 pounds. And, you don't, I think, well, you and I are kind of talking earlier, and it's not necessarily that people equate African Americans with volleyball. And unfortunately, a lot of African Americans do not get started in volleyball, much like yourself, a lot of them get started maybe when they're in high school or something like that.
Yeah.
And you think about, not only men's volleyball, but not only volleyball, but lacrosse, the same thing. Jim Brown is considered by many to be the greatest football player of all time, but he's also considered by many to be the greatest lacrosse player of all time.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's funny because a lot of people don't realize Wilt was a great beach volleyball player. There are other NBA guys that play volleyball or have volleyball in their background in some way, shape, or form. But it's always just, I think we get started so late because we don't get exposed to it until we get cut from basketball or football. Right. And then we try to find something else. And I think now we're starting to get to the stage of like those guys who are the ninth man down on these rosters when it comes to basketball. They're like, well, I can go over here and I can probably be a starter just off my gifted athletic ability. And now kids are getting exposed to it a little bit more and a little bit sooner. And they're like, all right, well, I'm not in that top rotation. And I know my minutes are going to be very few and slim. Like, why not try this? And usually that's when it comes, because everybody usually makes the freshman team unless you're just like horrendous. You're going to make the freshman A or freshman B team. It's about sophomore years where they figure out, like, is this going to be my avenue or not? Am I going to be able to stay in this sport, or am I going to have to venture and find something else? And it's even like you get baseball kids transferring over, you all kinds of track kids transferring over. So, I mean, on my team currently, we have a kid that was born in Jamaica
Mm-hmm.
He was a soccer and track guy. He wasn't volleyball at all. And then he just happened to get involved with volleyball because he was a high jumper, long jumper, triple jumper, right? So he's a flyer. And he just decided to try it out and ended up falling in love with it when he came into the States and lived in Florida and just took off from there, right? But again, that wasn't until he was 16.
Wow.
So the sooner we get exposed to it, the faster we're going to take off, right? That's why I said I was fortunate enough to be in this game a lot earlier than most.
So men's volleyball is primarily, I believe, a spring sport, whereas women's volleyball is a fall sport. And so you mentioned basketball players playing. And I would imagine that volleyball is one of those sports, much like cheerleading, that you can take the skills there and move them to other sports. You mentioned track and field as well, and I'm a former track and field coach, and that was one of the things that I always thought about was like, man, we get some of these volleyball players that can really sky and can get them to do the high jump or long jump, that might be something. And so
yeah, so if my dad was here, he would go into a full spiel for you because we use other sports for our kids to understand this game. And basketball and volleyball are the same sport. People don't understand they're on the same court for a reason. Volleyball was invented by a basketball coach for his players to have something to do in the off season. If you think about blocking in men's volleyball, blocking is the same thing in basketball. It's blocking and how to prevent a shot without crossing the line and penetrating and getting into that zone where you're going to get called for that foul, right? Defensively, defense is nothing different than a 3-2 trap, right? Ball gets thrown to the wing. Okay, the middle is going to slide over and trap. He's going to sag, and they're going to make our moves. It's all the same. There's nothing different. Soccer, defensively, you're making a move in front of the ball and you're just finding the avenues. There's so many ways you can take this sport. I've even used fishing for my guys when it comes to hitting. You're throwing or casting a reel out. You're not casting it down. If you cast it down, your reel's going nowhere, right? You're casting it out deep. So when I'm hitting the ball, I want to cast out and over the ball. Same thing with basketball. If I'm shooting, you're goosenecking. It's the same thing when you hit, right? It all correlates into each other.
Okay.
Yeah, it all it starts clicking. You start looking at it like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've never heard that correlation before, and I wish I had known that before because I was never successful as in volleyball as far as serving overhand. I was always good with underhand serves, playing with people on my level. Because I guess I had the ability to place the ball where I wanted to go for the most part, underhand. But I knew that if I could master the overhand serve, that would make me more dangerous, but never could do it. And then what you just said,
everything
I
just
used to love fishing.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And that's how it is for our kids, right? Like we try to take whatever sport that they know well or what they're coming from and use that to help them learn the sport. I mean, we had a guy who just graduated early in 3 years. His first 2 years, he was a basketball guy too. He was actually recruited to be a basketball player. And it was like, hey, I heard you guys are starting volleyball. Would you mind if I did volleyball too? And the coach reached out to me. I was like, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like that works for me. And he ended up falling in love with it. He let basketball go and came directly over to volleyball and graduated early. And now he's off to go to medical school. So it's whatever way you need me to teach you that clicks, I will do it. We will break this down to the minute degree and get you to where you need to be to where it clicks because everybody is different, right? Everybody learns differently. So figuring that out for our kids and our guys is always important. Like using whatever resource you can to make it work.
Okay. So we just mentioned that volleyball is primarily a spring sport. When does the season start and end?
So season will start in January. Like practices and everything like that will start about end of September, October area. is when we'll start our practices, and then they'll take their breaks, obviously, because it's not our competition season. It's not our championship season.
Mm-hmm.
But our championship season is January until, if you go into the championship of the NCAA tournament, into May, the second week of May of spring. But we're going from, our guys will get on campus normal. There's no rush, but they'll start up. They'll get in the gym. They'll probably bug me as soon as they step foot on campus to get in the gym, which is what you want, right? That's an awesome thing as a coach for your kids to bother you to want to be in the gym. But as a team, we won't really start into our care hours until about October, and we'll venture in from there.
Okay. So do you have a dedicated court there at Fort Valley, or do you have to share court with basketball?
We share with basketball.
Okay.
We share basketball. But we all work together pretty well, so it goes easily. I'm a guy that likes to get things out of the way. So we're usually going 6 to 8 in the morning. Like, I want to get it. Let's go in the morning. So the reason we do that is we'll go 6 to 8 in the morning, and then we'll have weights right after from 8 to 9. And our kids are usually done with any athletic stuff with us, unless they choose to come in. They're usually done by 10 a.m. Because I want them to have a college experience. I don't want them to solely be focused in on just volleyball. Whereas, yes, I want you to focus on it, but I need you to balance your work life, right? Like, you're a student, you're an athlete, and you're a person. There are 3 sides of you that you need to focus on, and it's not just one or the other. And so I try to be as loose as I can be with them, unless it's something we absolutely need to do. And they've, again, what we talked about, not having someone in front of you to be able to, like, guide you when you come into a program. They're starting to learn now, like, coach doesn't bother us unless it's something like we absolutely need to do or he needs us to do. Otherwise, he's not messing with us. So if he asks us for something, don't complain. Just go do it, because he doesn't mess with us 75% of the time. Like, do what you need to do. So we'll go in the morning, 6 to 8. When I had the women's program, they followed right after, and they would go 8 to 10, and then basketball goes in that afternoon to early evening slot. So it flows pretty well.
Okay. And so, as far as transitioning for athletes, and this is something I used to actually talk about at coaches clinics whenever I was a clinician. There's a big transition from high school to college. And I learned this from someone else at another clinic. That's why I always tell people, educators and coaches are really good, should be really good at one thing, and that's stealing. So you steal certain things from others.
You borrow.
Okay, all right. I'm just using the word of stealing because I stole that off of this one guy that was he was giving a master class to teachers, and so that's what he said. But yeah, it's like, in high school, you got mom and dad, or you have parents or somebody waking you up. You have someone, or you're at school, so you'll have practice right after school or sometime after school. You have everything laid out for you. Whereas when you transition into college, even as a freshman, there's no one, coach is not there to wake you up. The coach gives you a time to be at practice, and it can be at any time during the day. And I know, like, you already have your schedule down. But I know, a lot of other coaches, they have to work around their student athlete schedules, or they tell the student athlete, and I don't know if this is your approach or not, they'll tell them, hey, we have practice at this time. So when you schedule your classes, make sure your class is not during these times.
Yeah, we try to give our guys like, hey, try to keep this time block open if you can. That's the one difficult thing, being at a D2 university. You don't have as many courses offered frequently. So you kind of, it puts you in a tough spot, because certain majors only have classes at certain times. So, like, I have a young man who's in the business degree field, and their classes are strictly from like 6 p.m. on. Like they're evening classes only because their professors are coming from work.
Right.
They're working professionals, so they're coming in. Like his classes are starting at like 4 p.m. and he's going until like 9 o'clock at night for business. So it's like certain degrees, like they don't have wiggle room of other times they can go. And so for me, I'm like, hey, keep this block open if you can. If you can't, it is what it is. I just suggest making up those reps you missed on your own, right? Like get caught up, because how am I going to take a starting job if I'm putting in less hours than the man who's got my job? But that's mainly the reason why I wanted to coach in college. So my dad had a club when we were in Chicago, and he wanted me to take it over. And for me, growing up and had just been a college guy graduating, when you graduate from college, you lose a sense of identity. You lose a sense of who you are, because half of my life, majority of my life has been this sport. And now that's gone. What am I now? Who am I now? What am I trying to do at this point now? So like the way I put it to people is I feel the high school and younger kids, they have enough people looking out for them. They have who are there for them 24/7 that are going to help them get where they need to be. I felt the college athlete and the college student are the ones who get lost, right? They're kind of just thrown to the wolves and told, figure it out, like figure out who you're going to be, figure out what you want to do, figure it, if what it is going to be what it is, right? And so for me, I wanted to go in and be able to help buffer those young men or young women into having a sense of identity and learning who they are, and start like diving into that and help be that resource that most college kids don't get, and be their advocate. I wanted to be their person they can lean on if needed be, because the younger generation of kid, that high school and younger, they have mom, dad, like you said, they have their teachers, they have their coaches, they have parents of friends that they've known their whole life, right? But the biggest transition in it is understanding the difference from high school to college. Is high school is still, it's fun, right? It's I'm still doing it because it's fun. College is a business. This is a job. It's the learning the difference of I was the best player at where I was, but now you're where everyone was the best player.
Right.
So now you have to deal with that adversity of you may not be starting, and this may be the first time in your life you've never started. Just like the kid who gets straight A's his whole life and gets his first C, we got to watch out for that kid, because now he might be in some trouble, right? So being able to be that liaison in a way for our athletes is something that was a no-brainer for me.
Well, I don't usually get into this until later, but you kind of brought something up. How do you handle the mental health aspect for your student athletes as well as your coaches?
So we usually dedicate a day to be strictly off. Like, don't come in. Like, that's a day to focus on you and have for you. If you always want to talk to me or my dad, who's my assistant, we're always here. Our phone is always reachable, and just building those connections with the kids so that they can feel vulnerable with you, right? Like, I'm not going to tell someone something that I don't feel comfortable with, right? So it's just building that bond and that connection with them, that they can feel vulnerable enough to share some things that most people wouldn't want to share because they would feel judged or whatever it may be. So mental health is big. It's something that when I was playing, and I'm sure when you were playing, like, that's not something that was brought up. You toughed it up, you rubbed some dirt on it, and you kept running, right? You kept moving. There was no such thing as that. It was figure it out. But also at the same time, like, we put our guys in some difficult situations to help them grow some mental fortitude, right? I'm gonna make things difficult a little bit in a controlled environment so that you're learning, like, I can do things I don't want to do at times, right? Like, I hate the mornings, and we practice at 6 a.m. So I'm getting up at 4 a.m. to get out the door, right?
Right.
But it's a sacrifice I have to make. And our guys learn that too, because you're waking up at 4 a.m, 5 a.m. to get to the gym. Nobody wants to get out of their warm bed when it's cold and 4 a.m. Like, especially when you get in Georgia, like Georgia gets cold to the 30s where there's frost in that winter time, but it gets warm by the day goes on. But my bed is really warm and it's cold and it's 4 a.m. do I really want to get up to go to practice today? Right? Like that's helping them build that mental fortitude and that mental ability to get through some tough times and be able to start to have that ability where their mental health can now be grown exponentially just by that simple task. And people don't think, like we talk in our gym, like the little things are more important than this big thing, right? You do enough little things, you get the big thing. So you do enough little mental tests and mental training things, you're going to get the big picture at the end of it when it's done, right? You don't see the forest before the trees.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because I have been thinking too about what you just said concerning being uncomfortable or being in uncomfortable situations and your practice times, because that my last collegiate coaching job, that was primarily my coaching time too, 6 in the morning. But I guess the difference is I lived about 45 to 50 minutes away from campus.
So I got a trip.
Right. And then my athletes, we had limited housing at that particular institution. And most of my athletes were local students. And so they stayed at home, but they didn't drive. So they had to take the bus. Fortunately, they lived in a city, in an urban environment. So they had to hop on a bus and take the bus in. So yeah, you definitely in
you got to really get up because now you got to know that bus schedule, and hopefully that bus schedule ain't running late. So you got to catch the earlier bus at that time.
Right.
Woo!
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
so
being comfortable, being uncomfortable is a huge saying in our gym. Because most growth comes from uncomfortability. If I'm comfortable, I'm complacent. Right? You think about lifting weights. Moving heavy weight puts you in an uncomfortable position, and it's tearing the muscles, right? Muscles have to tear in order for them to grow. Right. It's the same thing for us as people. Like if you're comfortable being uncomfortable, there's never going to be an environment where you can't thrive.
Right.
Or figure something out of how to be successful.
Right. And we share a lot of the same philosophies. Like I said, I did that. I did that schedule with my athletes too, so that they can get to class.
Correct.
Because that they are students first, athletes second, and you come to a college or university in order to attain a degree, not to play a sport, especially when you're at a smaller institution. In volleyball, there's some, $1 million contracts out there somewhere, but you're not, they're not like the NBA or the NFL.
And it's still a small percentage of people who play pro, because if you want to play pro in volleyball for men, like you're going overseas only. Like there's not a professional league. They're trying to get it going in the States. They've been trying to get professional men's volleyball going in the States for 10 years. Women's volleyball is just getting going with a pro, so we'll see how that goes. But like if you're wanting to play pro, you're going overseas. So like most guys have never been overseas. You don't know what that's like. And now you got to go live in a completely different culture to play professionally. And that's the toughest part, and why they're trying to get into the States is a lot of our kids and a lot of our athletes just stop playing because they don't want to go internationally. Their family's here. Like, why am I going to go there for 7 to 8 months out of the year and miss my family this whole time just to play pro? Like, yeah, I love the game, but I don't love it that much. Right? Like that's a big difference. But if I was able to play in the States and family can just take a flight and be here in 3 to 4 hours, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Right. And to go into another sport, and since you mentioned that, the WNBA, yeah, it's been around for a little while now, but I I think I might have been a grown man, or I might have been an older teen when it started. And so I remember that women who wanted to play pro, they had a couple of failed leagues before. But if you wanted to play pro, you had to play overseas. And then when they started the WNBA, and even up until now, and there's a lot of hype about the WNBA due to Caitlin Clark. And because of Caitlin Clark, I believe some salaries have been elevated, or at least, that came at the same time that she came into the league with the visibility and everything. So, but people don't understand. A lot of people I talked to didn't understand why Brittany Griner was playing in Russia. Well, Brittany Griner is getting paid a lot more money in Russia than she is in the United States.
In the United States, I believe Brittany was only making $30,000 to $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
Her in Russia, she was probably making a good couple mil.
Mm-hmm.
Right there's it's still that way for the women's WNBA. I think it's a combined thing of Caitlin Clark and Brittany Griner of salaries starting to go up. Right, like one of our top players was in prison in Russia for X, Y, and Z amount of time. But then we also can now see, hey, there is some publicity here we can get. We can push this. There's a lot of girls watching now, and a lot of people who are invested. So I think we're going to start seeing that trend moving the up way for the WNBA for sure, and women's sports in general.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully so, because when Lisa Leslie, Don Staley, and all those women came in, they brought a lot of visibility to the WNBA. They were Olympians. They were gold medalists. They had won, national championships or had been to the Final Four. These were very successful women. And so, in my opinion, just off of that, they should have been making a lot more than what they were making.
Yes.
And I know the argument has been ongoing for many years concerning the disparity in pay. And yeah, the men do deserve, a certain amount. I mean, if you can get that much money, go get it. That's not the player's fault.
Take it. You take it.
And so, hopefully the same thing will happen for volleyball. I loved the last Olympics, the U.S. women, what they did. That was great. They had a lot of great storylines. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I don't think, they were able to capitalize off of that.
Yeah, I think this Olympics is going to be awesome because you do have a big swing. And the Olympics is when a lot of people get exposed to other sports that they normally don't watch. And I think with the trend of where it's going for volleyball, women's volleyball, and then men's volleyball around the Olympics is where we get the most love, is because people are seeing it like, oh, my God, I didn't realize how physical and fast this game really is. Like, oh, man, these dudes are hitting balls at 70, 80 miles an hour at you. And you got to use your body to defend it. Like not a bat, not a glove, your body to defend this ball. And you, right? Like you start to see that and you're like, man, these dudes jump as high as NBA players. They hit balls hard. Like what is happening? Like it's action play every single time. And when I'm talking to people, I'm like, when you watch the NBA, you love dunks, don't you? Oh, yeah. Okay. Volleyball is a dunk every play. It's strictly a dunk every play, or it's a block shot every play, or you'll get a big dig out of nowhere, and you're like, what just happened? That was so crazy. I don't even know the sport or know the rules, but I know that was awesome, right? So now we're going to start getting that trend of visibility, and I think if we're able to piggyback off of the Olympics, I think definitely volleyball is going to get more notoriety and more visibility that can help us grow it. I would say in 10 years maybe is when the professional side in the States will probably really take off.
And I guess people also might not realize that volleyball is a very fast-paced sport because it's very rare that you get into extremely long rallies. And
that's the biggest difference of men's and women's, right? Men's game is a lot more physical. Points are ending like that, like it's instantaneous. Points don't really go long. If they do go long, you'll see every guy on the court bend over to tie their shoe to get that extra couple seconds of breath. Like, yo, that was like a minute, and now it's too long. Coach, give me a timeout. I need something. I need some air. But the women, like, it's a lot more craftiness. It's not as physical with things. I do believe the women's side is starting to get a lot more physical. They're starting to take some things from the men's side. It's allowing them to be physical. But they're still, like, you're going to get more rallies than not. Right? Guys' side is all about physicality. You're going to have more missed serves on the men's side, which all women's coaches hate, because we're bombing jump serves. And in men's volleyball, if I'm not taking a team out of system, I'm in trouble, because now they're coming at me with a full gun salute out, ready to bang balls. So now I got to worry about everything. Whereas women, okay, you may have that, but you're able to make up for it a little bit easier, right? It's not fast pace of a ball coming out.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I mean, I said volleyball is a very interesting sport. I mean, it's fun to play, but it's also one of those sports that's fun to watch. You know, if you really sit there and watch it, especially if there are a lot of spikes and blocks, like you were mentioning, a lot of incredible saves, and so you get the full gambit with volleyball.
And I think the one thing too, like a thing of why a lot of our culture isn't involved in the game is volleyball at the moment is still very technical. There's a lot of rules that people don't understand, and they're at the game. They just want to enjoy the game, and then there's a whistle and something's called. They're like, what just happened? What was that whistle for? And they're confused now. And then they're like, oh, I'm lost now. I'm out of it. But like, the more we can not necessarily simplify the game, but make it to where it's a little bit more spectator friendly, right? Take some of these judgment calls out. Like, we don't need as many judgment calls as possible, because they're going to be different everywhere, right? It's judgment for a reason. This ref may call it. This ref may not care one bit about it, right? But then as a fan, I'm watching it and I'm going, okay, well, that should have been this from the last game I watched. Why wasn't it called here? Like, what happened, right? And now you get people just yelling things like double. It was double, right? But that's what they know. That's what they've seen off of another experience. So getting more streamlined of it being simplified in a way to understand, and then we can really take off into the TV industry, because now the rules are simple, right? It's not this heavy technical game where you're like, what just happened? Why did they get the ball when they scored the point? What happened in there that made this all go crazy?
Yeah, and that's interesting as well, because I was a long time ago, I was approached about being a volleyball official. I'm already, an experienced track and field official. But the one thing they told me was volleyball actually is paid more than other sports, at least on the high school level, because number one, it's so fast paced, it's not that long. Number two, the amount of money is equitable to other sports, no matter how long that they're out there. And so, you're really getting more bang for the buck if you officiate volleyball. And I know at some colleges, I've been to some college matches that they had a shortage of qualified officials, so they had to quickly train people to be line judges and everything else. So I think that's another opportunity for people who want to get involved.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm going to be doing with our guys this year. Remember how I talked about having an official come in and get them going? I'm going to make sure I get them certified. They can go into these high schools in the fall and officiate, right? How else are you going to learn the game quicker? By not doing the game, right? Like, you can coach it, you can ref it. Your IQ is going to grow drastically than if you played it. So we're going to get them. So, and it gives them money in their pocket. like you said, it is a good pay. And for guys who know the game, and I'm just going to line judge a high school or a college match, $50 in my pocket for an hour. Cool. I'll take that. Who wouldn't take $50 an hour, right? Like, come on. I'd gladly do that. But yeah, like most matches usually last anywhere from an hour to about an hour and a half. Like you're really pushing it, like, and it's a really drawn out game if you're going 2 hours, right? It's not really going to go 2 hours ever.
Right.
Like those are rare. That means you win all 5 sets and you win extended points in every set.
Yeah, that's interesting too. That's the same philosophy that one of my coaches had back when I was an assistant commissioner for a collegiate conference. Anytime he had athletes who were hurt, he made sure that they became certified officials. So that way, like you said, and we weren't getting paid as officials that much back then. Officials are getting paid now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Not many want to do it anymore. There's so much craziness that attacking of officials that most of them are like, I'd rather just stay at home and do a normal 9 to 5. I ain't got people yelling at me 24/7, telling me I don't know how to do my job.
Right. So that for those collegiate athletes who are out there listening to this, that might be another opportunity for you to make some money. Whatever sport it is, make sure you learn that sport, then learn who the officiating body is, get certified, and if you have any downtime, go make some money.
Go make extra cash, or even make that your full time, right? Like there are people who make reffing and officiating their full time, and they may do 2-3 sports, and they're making really good money, right? And you're going to guarantee have a job no matter where you move. You can live wherever you want. You can go officiate and get certified again in that same area. Right. So it's definitely something as a college kid you should 100% be trying to do. Like officiate as much as you can. If you're in the summer and you're back home, officiate as much as you can and get paid at your recs that have open gyms and runs. Like it only benefits you in your growth in the sport, and it guarantees you a job always.
Right. Well, Coach, tell us a bit about your postseason this year.
Yeah, so postseason was awesome. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but postseason for conference for us, our guys came in on a mission this year. So during the regular season, we went 12-0. They didn't drop a match. Sets played, we only dropped 1 set. We were 36-1 in sets played. So we won all of our matches in 3. And only dropped 1 set and went to 4 late in the year. And that's just because our guys had a mental fart. But going into the postseason, we were able to be the number 1 seed. And we had Kentucky State in the first round. Your alma mater, I'm sorry I had to do it to you. And we beat Kentucky State in 3. And then we faced Central State, who upsetted Edward Waters, who was the favorite. And Kentucky State or Central State did a great job in that match. They did a lot of things that Edward Waters was not expecting, and they came to ball. And then we had to play them in the finals, and we took them down in 3, and our boys were – it was like the biggest sigh of relief in a way of like, this is what we've been working for since day one when we started this program in 2020. And I talked to these guys as I was recruiting them. I was like, hey, we're not worried too much on year 1 and year 2. Yes, we want to win. Everybody wants to win. But we care about year 3. Year 3 is the year we want this conference, and we don't want to let it go. Because come year 3, we should have our automatic qualifier to go to the NCAA tournament. And I want our program to be that team that's ready. And so the whole time we had been building that anticipation for 3 years, building up into it. And it was funny, the year before, I was sitting with one of our players and we weren't having a great year. And we were just like, man, I just hope it all works out for next year. It's like, I would lose every match this year if it meant we were going to win next year. And lo and behold, our guys came out on a mission. They went in the summer and they grinded and they put in the work. They knew where they needed to get better at. We returned everybody, and they did what they needed to do, and they handled that out, and they built our culture to a spot where we are the standard. We're not chasing a standard. We are the standard. You have to keep up to us if you want to be at a high level volleyball. And then we got to go in NCAA tournament, right? First HBCU to attend the National Division I volleyball tournament for men's volleyball. So we got to make history in that, right? And we got to do it with the team we opened our season with, and the guy who is a part of donating the money to our conference, John Sproul, who's the head coach for UCLA and the head coach for our national team. So we got to open our season with him, and we got to end our season with him. And he's a person who donated to the conference to make this a reality. So for me, it was no better feeling than to come into that, because it's already a unknown for our guys, right? They're already uncomfortable. Like, this is something we've never been into. Right. So to have a familiarity coming into it allows them to, okay, I can calm down a little bit because we've seen them, we've played them. There's not much going to be different. This is something that's similar. We may be in a different environment, different atmosphere, but we have something that we can have something that is similarity to keep us involved in what's going on. So, I mean, our guys just did a lot of work, a lot of work on their own with us in the gym, coming to watch a video. Like, they took it serious. They finally understood what I meant by this is a business, right? And your body is your responsibility. So I'm going to give you the knowledge. You have to do the work. The way I used it on a recruit the other day. And I was like, think of it like this. I'm Siri, or I'm Google Maps. Right. I'm going to guide you, but I'm not doing the driving. I'm not doing the walking. I'm not doing the manual labor of it. You got to do the work. And they finally started to buy into that aspect of it. And this summer, guys are in the gym 24/7. They're checking in with one another like, yo, what'd you do today? Did you get in the weight room today? Hey, I did this today. You ain't catching up to me. You ain't on my level, right? Like, we like to have that competitive, a good competitive atmosphere in our gym where, yeah, we're going to talk a little trash to one another, but it's to push and make sure my brother is better, because if he's at his best, he's pushing me to be my best, and whoever gets the job has the job. And now I'm going to support you, but I'm ready if you go down or you need a minute off and today's an off day, I'm ready to go whenever my number is called. And so building that culture of, I used to call us a family. I don't use the word family anymore, because when you use the word family and you think about family, people take things for granted, right? I'm in the family. I don't have to do anything. You got it, right? They sit back and they just ride on coattails. So we are a tribe. We're not a family. We're a tribe. And for a tribe to be successful, every member in the tribe has to contribute. Everybody has to pull their weight for us to be a very thriving tribe. When you think about a tribe, it's a collective of people from a bunch of different walks of life that came together and made this commune. And then that became where it was a family after that, but it's still in the tribe mindset. And so that's where we are, and that's how we push ourselves and thrive. And coming into it, every match is a battle. Every match is a war. We got to get up the mountain and down the mountain. Most people die when they climb Mount Everest on the way down, not on the way up, because you get to the top and you go, oh, I made it. I did it. But you forget, I got to get down still. Right. And so for us, it's big into that aspect of, we talk about in games. You won the first 2 sets. Awesome. You got up the mountain. We're not done. You still need to get down this mountain to finish this game. Stay focused. Don't lose intent of what we're doing. Be intentful, be purposeful, and let's go home. Get down the mountain safely. And if it goes 5, okay, that means that down the mountain, there was some treacherous terrain that we had to go through. But we got to go through it still to get where we got to go. And these guys are just grinding day to day, day in, day out. And that made postseason so easy and made it taste better for us.
Okay. And so you kind of mentioned something earlier that I'd like for you to expound on. What do you look for in recruits?
In recruits, I mean, for me, obviously you're going to look for that ability. I mean, that's a given for any coach. But for me, it's always the intangibles, right? Like, how's your body language? How are you when a teammate makes a mistake? How are you when you make a mistake? How are you if you get subbed out? How are you if you're on the sideline, right? Like, there's a kid I'm recruiting that's a Florida kid, and he's a setter, but on his team, the setter is going to Stanford, I believe. So they're going to ride him out. He's not going to see much tick. So when I got to his court, I wanted to see how he was going to act, right? And I do this to kids all the time is day one, I want you to see me at your court. So I'm wearing bright gold. You're going to know I'm standing there. The next day, I might be in this nice gray hoodie. I'm blending in. I look like a dad just walking around. I want to see what you do when I'm not there. How do you act when you don't see a college coach at your court? Are you acting the same as when you did see me? Or is your effort the same? Are you a good teammate? Are you a good kid to your coach, right? Are you coachable? Those are the things I care about the most. And because I can teach you the game, right? Tomlinson said it best for the Steelers head coach. He's like, if I see a guy, I'm like, oh, he's got bad footwork or his speed is a little slow. If I see that and I go, I don't want him, I'm not a coach.
Right.
Shouldn't be a coach. Those aren't the things I'm focused on. I'm focused on you as a person. Are you a good person? Are you a competitor? Do you have a little bit of a dog in you? Or are you a guy that we can kind of get a little bit of a dog in you being in our system? And then that's when we have those conversations and we're having that talk. And I'm letting them know, like when I have conversations with guys, I tell them right out the gate, I'm not a sugarcoater. I'm not a beat around the bush kind of a person. Even in the recruiting process, I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes my guys like, Coach, you couldn't have just been like a little nicer with me on this. I'm like, no, bro. Because if I beat around the bush or I sugarcoat it, we're not getting to the true problem right away. Right? That's wasted time. And so in that process, we're having those conversations. We're seeing who connects, and then we're bringing them on campus when they come, and then our guys are evaluating them, right? Like, do you want to welcome them into our tribe? Are they somebody you would want to go to war with? You would want to go to battle with that you know is going to have your back no matter what, if things are going well for them or things are going bad for them. So those are the main things I'm looking for on the court. And then, of course, you're looking at the technical things, like how much power does he have on the ball if he's hitting? Like, does he have enough gas in his arm? If he's a defender, what does his technique and platform look like? Does he have a good first touch? A setter, I'm looking at him like a point guard. Does he facilitate my offense well? Is he a general on the court? Or is he just a guy who can put up a ball? Right? Like, or is he more of a Steph Curry, a Chris Paul, a Kyrie Irving who is facilitating their offense and they are communicating nonstop? Those are like the tangible things that I'm going to be looking for, obviously. And then for middles, it's how quick is he laterally? Is he fast laterally because he's got to close a lot of blocks? Can he get off the net fast? Can he get back into transition quickly? So tangibly things, those are what I'm looking for. But that's probably, I would say 45% of it. The other is all the intangibles.
Okay. Wow. That's great. And it's really good when I hear a coach mention that they're not just looking at ability, but they're looking at other aspects and to determine whether or not that student athlete is a good fit into their program, because that's what it's all about anyway, is whether you fit into. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not a good fit, your time in that program, especially with the portal, is going to be short.
Very short. Very, very short. And it doesn't last long for you if you're not there and you can't handle it.
Well, Coach, please tell us a bit about Fort Valley State. What are some of the major programs there at the institution?
So we're a very big agricultural university. So our ag program, which covers really everything, like you can do agriculture and go into business, right? If you want a business degree, you can go into agriculture. If you want to do, we have now 2 guys who are engineers, going to be engineers. They're in the ag program. One's an electrical engineer and one's just an agricultural engineer. You have our health and physical education program is a top program for us as well on our campus. We're bringing in nursing. So nursing will go into, I think they started their first cohort last spring. So they'll be having that going more and everyone's excited about that. But then again, looking into the agriculture, our vet tech, our veterinary program is awesome. We have a lot of people who come from Fort Valley, our vets, critter fixers. Those guys are Fort Valley alums. And they'll shoot on campus sometimes and they'll come and do their thing. But vet tech is a big thing. And with that aspect of it, our sciences are pretty high. So like, as I mentioned, we had a guy who graduated to go into medical school. So like we have a lot of kids who will come in and do biology just to get their prereqs to go to med school. He's going to be a neurosurgeon. We have another guy in our program who's trying to be a cardiovascular surgeon. And so like the programs are there. And what I'll tell most people is if you're planning to do a secondary education, your first go where you can get it at a good cost and you're comfortable and you fit, because that undergraduate is going to end up being is going to expire as soon as you get your secondary. No one's going to look at the first one anymore. They're going to go off that other one. So like our guys who are going to be doctors, they're here, they're doing an awesome job in their programs. Their programs are challenging them and getting them connected with a lot of people. That actually is the one thing I would say I love about HBCUs is the networking for our just students in general, the networking. And someone told me this when I first took the job. They're like, your kids are going to do one of two things. Their mentor is either going to find them or they're going to find their mentor. That's every HBCU. And I was like, okay, cool. I got it. But as I started sitting there, I'm like, oh, my kids are starting to find other guys and other people who are mentors for them that aren't just us. Like they're starting to branch out. They're starting to do things. And we had a kid who wants to be a cardiovascular surgeon. He's made great connections where he's gone to Baylor in the summer to do internships. Wow. He's been to Oklahoma. He went to University of Oklahoma and did an internship there. And like he gets paid to do research studies with them. Right. But the connections you make at an HBCU are awesome, especially at Fort Valley. We have a lot of networking that happens of people that you really may not know, because Fort Valley may not be this big name university yet. But it's getting there. Like we have the tools, but I would say our vet tech, our agriculture, our HPE program, and then like bio, which kind of I tie into vet tech and everything because it's about the same.
Okay. Well, actually, the woman who helped me a lot with science when I was in junior high school is a Fort Valley alum.
See?
And her classmates lived here in Kentucky as well. And one of them was a very influential civil rights figure.
Okay.
Here in Kentucky, and even on a national level, and so Fort Valley State has their alums are out there doing their thing.
They are proud. They are awesome. I love our fans. I love our alumni. They bleed this blue and they bleed this gold. Like you ain't gonna find nothing else and find nothing better. 100%.
And that was the one thing. It just blows my mind. When I was younger, I did not realize how many primarily African Americans that I knew graduated or attended HBCUs, from my own family to close family friends. And, a lot of the family friends that we have, we talk and ironically, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of our close family friends are alums of SIAC schools.
Okay.
so we don't talk a lot of trash to each other, but sometimes I'll let them know, hey, your alma mater is coming to play Kentucky State this weekend. If you want to roll up to Frankfurt or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, and even a lot of my relatives, they graduated from SIAC schools, and so, it's kind of crazy, but it's fun. It's fun,
for me with Fort Valley, even when I came on the visit and when I talked to most kids, I'm like, Fort Valley is a hidden gem People don't know about it. And then they step foot on campus and like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is awesome. Was not expecting this. I'm like, yeah, like it's a hidden gem, truly. Educationally, I mean, we've been the number one HBCU in the state of Georgia, public HBCU, for the past 4 years. Right? Like, we are a good educational university. And I think a lot of it just comes to the stereotypes of the masses that we have this preconceived notion that HBCUs aren't good educational systems. Yeah, it's a huge hidden gem. I mean, even when I came on my visit, when I was getting the job, the university I was previously at, the University of Charleston, is a pretty small D2 university in West Virginia. And I was like, okay, it's HBCU. Like, going off, I've never been an HBCU, right? I was a kid, played at a PWI. I didn't really know much about HBCUs. And so when I'm coming, I'm like, okay, it's probably going to be about the same, maybe a little bigger. We'll see. And I stepped foot on campus and I was like, oh my God, this is what you're giving me to recruit to? Because say less. I can make this happen. Like, this is beautiful. The campus and the greenery is great. It's the size, like coming from Ball State, which is a pretty, like a mid-major D1. Like, I consider Fort Valley has the capability of being a mid-major D1 university, hands down, when it comes to the size of our university, to the things that we offer.
And so, yeah, as I said, and people don't know till they actually step foot on campus. You know, they might hear a lot of stereotypical nonsense from haters.
Yep.
And not really realize, you know, HBCUs offer a lot, including, and I've graduated from HBCU. And am currently enrolled at an HBCU, and I've also graduated from a number of PWIs. And the one thing that I can say about HBCUs is that there's also, I don't know if I should use the word family or tribe.
Changed your mind on it, huh?
But you have that type of vibe on campus.
A true community.
Right.
A true community, not a community where it's, I'm not really trying to talk. Like, everybody, like, I'll tell kids even when I'm recruiting them, like, you're gonna walk around campus and you're gonna have a bunch of uncles and aunties walking around looking after you. Like, you ain't doing what you're supposed to and you acting up, somebody gonna let you know. But if you're a great kid, they're gonna let you know, right? Like, they want our kids to be successful, and they're gonna be a bunch of uncles and aunties watching out for you every single time.
And unless you're like a strictly night school student, you're primarily gonna know the majority of the people on campus. You know, that's just the way it is.
Yep.
Whereas you go to a large PWI, that's not gonna happen.
You'll know 100 of the people there.
Right.
You're really getting much of it. But HBCU, just because it is such a big cultural thing, I think, especially come homecoming, like, homecoming is awesome because that's when you really get to learn about your alums and you get to see the true pride in your university. Like, an HBCU homecoming is nothing compared to a PWI, or strike that, reverse it. A PWI homecoming is nothing compared to an HBCU homecoming. Right. That for us is a huge recruiting tool because it's like you can see the pride in. It's not just, oh, it's homecoming, so I'm gonna go, I'm gonna tailgate, I'm gonna cook out, and I'm gonna have some drinks. Like, no, like, they're coming to enjoy the experience. They're coming to relive where they used to be. Like, it is truly a community at HBCUs.
Right. Well, Coach, tell us about the biggest influences in your career.
Biggest influences in my career, I mean, first and foremost is obviously my father. I got to watch him work with underprivileged kids majority of my life. And growing up, I knew I wanted to be in sports. I wanted to be in sports no matter what. I didn't know why at the moment, but after I graduated college and I was coaching, I always would remember, like, when kids had those aha moments, right? When that light bulb flicks on and you're like, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what I have. and like you start to see the development of the young person coming into their own. And so seeing him do that with kids where he is their parent most of the time. Their
Mm-hmm.
parents aren't really around, or one parent's around, but they're so busy they can't really be there. So he's being that father figure for a lot of kids. And you see that subconsciously and you soak it in. And that takes me to be where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And then his knowledge, like he got me to where I was. Like I was a 5'11" outside playing against 6'5" to 6'9" guys and dominating. Like it wasn't like I was this guy who was sitting on the bench and just chilling. Like, no, I was a starter. I was playing as a smaller player. And it was
Mm-hmm.
partly because of the fundamental and the structure I was given from him. And that's where, from my knowledge of the game, I always say I'm the Ed 2.0. I'm the upgrade everybody gets. Because I take a lot of what he used to do and I just put a newer age twist to it, right? I borrow. I didn't steal it. I borrowed it and flipped it, right? I made it my own. But then, I mean, you have John Speraw at UCLA. He's been a mentor to me.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Hosek, who's at
Mm-hmm.
George Mason University head coach. He's another great mentor for me. I think for me, a lot of the coaches in the D1, D2 level,
Mm-hmm.
for me in a way, just because I've played against majority of them. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are still the same coaches who were coaching when I was a player. So they either recruited me or they coached against me.
Right.
And I've built that relationship with them over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Two of my like people are Nikki Sandlin, who's a black
Mm-hmm.
female head coach at a Division II at McKendree University,
Mm-hmm.
and Theo Edwards, who's at California State University in Northridge, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Carl France, who's at Fairleigh Dickinson. All
Mm-hmm.
three are black head coaches, right? There's only, if you discard or you don't put in the count of the HBCUs, the six, well, seven
Mm-hmm.
now, eight now, there's only five black head coaches.
Mm-hmm.
They're all close friends of mine. I had my own podcast and I'm bringing it back coming this year because now I
Mm-hmm.
have time to do it again. And it
Right.
talked about just the black experience in men's volleyball. And I
Mm-hmm.
had all of the black head coaches in men's volleyball were on it because they were friends of mine. And I was just a counterpart of mine, a white colleague reached out. He's like, hey, it was during the George Floyd thing. He's like, hey, you should start a podcast about something about
Mm-hmm.
being black and being in the sport. And I was like, okay, yeah, like just kind of brushed it off. And then I text my buddy. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts? He's like, I'm 100% in. You let me
Mm-hmm.
know in what you want to do. And each person I reached out to, it was just like unbridling support. It was just like, yes, whatever you need, we're 100% in for that. And we cover things from what it's like to be black playing internationally. Like their
Mm-hmm.
program will not hire you, or coaches will not hire because you're black in certain countries.
Right.
We talked about what it's like to be a mulatto. Like I'm mixed. I have a mother and a black father. You
Mm-hmm.
ain't black enough to hang out with the black people because you play volleyball, and you're not white enough to hang out with the white kids in volleyball because you're black and you come from a hood, right? So like you're trying to find that identity. We talked about representation. We hit into a bunch of different things, but
Mm-hmm.
using those guys as advocates for me who are black coaches in a predominantly white sport, right? Like even as coaches, we have to deal with things that our counterparts don't, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
most times as a black head coach, unless you are in the USA gym or you have some big title tag to you,
Mm-hmm.
they look at you like you don't know what you're talking about, no matter
Mm-hmm.
who you recruit. But your counterpart can come up and they've never played the game before in their life, but they decide to coach it. They listen to every word they say.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like we got to fight that stereotype in the sport as well as a coach. And so
Right.
like having them as advocates for me that I could be like, hey, how did you deal with this? Or hey, have you dealt with something like this? Or what do you do for this? And for us, it's always like cheering on one another. Like we want each other to be successful because that's us, right? We're still a minority even in this sport as we grow. And that's why when I talk about the HBCUs, like I want to spearhead it. I don't want to be just the only one who's good. Like I want us all to be really, really good. So whatever
Mm-hmm.
I can do to help, whether it's helping find a coach for a new program or
Mm-hmm.
having a coach who's a friend of mine that's in the HBCU system and there's a kid that I may not want or take, but hey, this kid is good. He needs to be in our conference.
Right.
You should be looking at this kid. Like I'm not going to hold in all my Easter eggs. So I think I have a wealth of knowledge of mentors that I can reach out to and relationships that I've built that I'm thankful for. And again, I'm in a position that a lot of people aren't in because I was able to be in this sport pretty much since I came out the womb, right? Like I've been around it a lot. People know me, people know my father because he's been doing this since 1981. He's been coaching. And I was born in 91. So he's already 10 years ahead of what I was getting into, right? And so when we moved to the Illinois and I started playing in club and he started playing, like he's a talker. He's 100% the guy you talk about. Who would you want to sit next to on a plane? He's the guy, most interesting man in the volleyball world. Easily, hands down, can talk about anything, bring about anything. Great person to talk with. So having that is beautiful as well. So I think we got some great connections that help us to make Fort Valley get where we need to go. Absolutely. And for me to get my growth that I need as a coach.
Okay, that's great. Well, Coach, this is the as we get prepared to wind down, this is the portion of the chat that we give you, the coach, to shout out anyone you want to shout out.
My first and foremost is always going to go to my wife. She takes the brunt of everything. We have a 3-year-old son who does not stop moving. From the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed at night, he is constantly on go. And she has to bear the brunt of dealing with that a lot on her own and taking care of our household and making sure things are running for us and being the biggest supporter for me that I can ever ask for. So first and foremost, I'm always going to thank my wife. Love her to death. Secondly is my son. I do what I do for him. My father, obviously, I coach with him. So like I get to not only coach at HBCU, but I get to coach at HBCU with my father, who has done this at the high school level, who is about what we're trying to do. That's just something special. I mean, to make history with your father being the first HBCU to go to the Division I national championship is something that will forever be cemented into the history books. And now that's something my son can see and his kids can see. And it's just something that is beautiful. Fort Valley, Dr. Jones, our president, Dr. Jones, he's a huge supporter of us, and the man has been nothing but awesome. He got to go to Cali with us. He's a Cali boy at heart anyway. He's from California, so he got to come out with us, and he got to really be around our guys a lot more and really see how personable they are, and he got to become a part of our tribe fully in, and he's like, I am a true supporter of men's volleyball, and he's been a great advocate for me as well. He's been a good supporter for me. And then from that, just my support staff, my team, my guys. I can't be the coach on this call with you having this interview if my guys don't do their job, right? Like I can't be here with a megaphone singing to the heavens unless they give me a pedestal to do that on. So they do a lot of the dirty work and a lot of the grunt work, and without them, I'm not here. So I got to always make sure I thank those young men and those young women when I had them. So definitely that. And then thanking you, Lacy, I appreciate you bringing me on and allowing me this platform to speak about Fort Valley State men's volleyball and our university and what we represent and who we are, and giving us that platform, right? Like that, you may not do a lot, but you do enough to get my voice out. And that is all we can ever ask for. So I truly thank you on that aspect for reaching out and wanting to get us on here.
Well, we definitely thank you as well, Coach Rather, for coming on and sharing, your knowledge, your wisdom concerning the sport. And, we definitely want to congratulate you on your accomplishments this year. And, especially being the first HBCU program to play in that Division I tournament. And we also will definitely look and follow your program to see how everything develops.
I better see you at Kentucky State. We're there this year for 2. We'll play Kentucky State back to back at their place this year. So I better see you.
Well, I'm going to try and make it a point to get up there. I'm assuming is that a East-West cluster or?
No. So the way we do things, because there's only 7 teams now, and Kentucky State are so far, we're kind of doing them on like the Hawaii model, and that's
Mm-hmm.
you go to them and you'll just play them their 2 matches there, and then the next year they'll come to you and play the 2 matches. So it just kind of saves on our travel
Mm-hmm.
and in our budget. So we'll be out there to play them for the men's side in March.
Okay. All right. Well, you definitely you have my number, so just let me
Text me
know.
on the ride on the plane like, hey, I better see you in like 2 days. Better be here.
Well, we also want to thank our audience, our viewers, for watching this episode of Chat with HBCU Champions. Please go to www.ricefame, that's RICEFAME.org for more information on our replays and more information about HBCUs in general. And for you, our viewers, as well as Coach Rather, we hope that you have a blessed week.
Go Wildcat.
Yeah. Now I'm talking about young shakes. I want to represent Jesse James. And this for my city.
Hey, I do it for my city. Dog, I don't plan on going down. If he think I'm going down, then he gone first round for my city. Dog, I ain't never been a chump. And if he thinking I'm a chump, watch him get his head lumped for my city. Dog, I don't plan on going down. If he think I'm going down, then he gone first round for my city. Dog, I ain't never been a chump. And if he thinking I'm a chump, watch him get his head lumped for my city. Cause I feel like I love her so much, like I owe her so much for supplying her touch. I will always respect her, I will never neglect her. Bet you hear her naming like every one of my records. No, I'm not stunting, ain't no future in your frontin', right? Gotta get this money, watch me get it all night. Planet flying top flight, higher than space stations. That's why I gotta grind, cause I need it and I hate waiting.